Hello, lovely podcast people. I hope you are well. Today's episode is on salt. I went for a run earlier, and for whatever reason, the topic of salts came into my head. And I realised, I think, I've never really covered anything on salt. And maybe in future I'll do something a bit more specific. I don't really know where I'm going to go with this. I was just pondering some stuff. It's, every so often, it's funny actually. I seem to get questions in waves of all around the same subject. So I'm sure at some point lots of people ask salt questions, and I can't fully put my finger on where this came from because I haven't had a big influx of questions on salt. And it's funny actually, it's a topic that two cool stories. One was I tweeted back when I tweeted. This is 10 years ago maybe. I tweeted something like, how much salt someone eats isn't in the top 100 things I would ask them. Something like that, to improve their health, or something like to help them achieve their goals, or something like that. And like 6 months later, I was in a gym and someone had a men's health magazine. And like, what are the chances of this? I can't remember if they had just like left the page open or they were reading it or something like that. And then there was my tweet taken from Twitter on the page, and it was like, Martin McDonald says this. What we want to know is, what would be the top 100 things that he would ask someone? I was like, how cool is that? I was also like, copyright, but also how did they see it? It's just very cool. And anyway, so that was quite cool. And then secondly, I can't remember when this was. This is going back a long time as well. I reckon around, I don't know, 2010 maybe-ish. I wrote an article on salt, and the Salt Association in the UK, who, for one, I don't know why I feel a bit, sorry, clearing my throat a lot. The Salt Association, which from what I understand is basically the lobbying body for salt, like they promote like salt use on the roads to de-ice the roads. I don't know, it's an easy remit, isn't it? Get people to use more salt. Like everyone loves the taste of it, and it's really important for de-icing roads. Anyway, so they contacted me and said, can we use your article and put it on our website? And I was like, yeah, knock yourself out. They didn't pay me any money, which is, I sort of feel like maybe they should have. I don't know. People get paid a lot of money to shill for big cereal and big breakfast, big salt, big potato, big potato. Yeah, big potato. I can't remember what they're called. It's something like the Potato Growers Association or something like that. They funded a study recently on, this is way off topic, but it does help you understand. It's always helpful for you to know these things. They did 300 calories of French fries versus 300 calories of almonds for 4 weeks and measured. And the potato, they did 2 potato groups, which was weird. Just French fries, and then one with like seasoned herbs on the French fries. These 3 groups. They didn't really find anything. I think they did use DEXA for body composition changes, but like 300 calories of potato extra. You know, I say extra, it's like you must eat this. But then if people eat a little less of something else, and it's like basically they'll use it some way in marketing or whatever to go, you know, French fries / potatoes don't cause you to gain weight. That's essentially what they concluded. Fine, whatever. Anyway, where was I? Sodium. Salt. And so salt, one of the reasons I guess back then was there's such a big, but you know, this is early in my career, like dietitians focusing so heavily on like, you must eat low fat, you must eat low salt. And low salt almost becoming this health halo thing. You call something low salt, it's suddenly healthy, which is not the case. And also just being demonized when it is a relatively important part of our diet. It's not an important part. Unfortunately, times have changed now, and you've got kind of keto zealots and the carnivore crowd, I believe, are jumping on the salt bandwagon. I think the keto guys are like, you need to eat loads of salt to help you not get constipation or something, is one of their big things. And another one, and I'm not entirely sure what their reasoning for that is, or what they suggest, or if they're making up some fancy stuff to do with peristalsis in the gut needing sodium. I don't know, or maybe it was just an observation. Someone ate more salt and therefore there's often a thirst response when people always go, salt dehydrates you. It doesn't. That's another thing which annoys me. Stop saying that. It's not a thing. You're welcome. I might even make that into a quote. Salt doesn't dehydrate you. Stop saying it. I say it into a quote, just in a post on Instagram. Salt doesn't dehydrate you. But there's often a thirst response, and then you drink more. And if you drink more, being dehydrated is one possible factor that could make constipation worse. Hard stools. You have to talk about the nitty-gritty in nutrition, don't you? Anyway, I don't like either end of the spectrum where, I've had family members, clients, followers over the years essentially who have been, salt's been so demonized that by their doctor, by a dietitian, by the media, I guess, that they have been restricting salt so heavily. And actually, when I was a performance nutritionist, athletes being very, very scared of salt, and there's lots of decent research in athletes with regards to kind of sweat rates and the sodium salt concentration in. So just for clarification, salt, table salt, is NaCl, sodium chloride. So when people often use the terms synonymously, just like for like, they're not the same thing. But for all intent and purposes, with regards to our diets, they have a really strong correlation in anything that we tend to discuss. So sodium chloride is salt, table salt. Sodium is just a component of that. And sodium is really what we're talking about with regards to its impact, lots of its impacts on the body. But there are other salts, like potassium chloride is also a salt. So if you ever used, low salt, LO salt is a product, I guess, brand, and I think it's, product. The brand is maybe Paxo, or different people will do it. But that's potassium chloride, and it's lower in sodium, because sodium is the one that is linked to the area of blood pressure, or high blood pressure, hypertension, high blood pressure. And but the problem is these athletes getting cramp, friends and family followers have said this to me over the years, I'm getting really, really bad cramp. And when I think, cramp is a tricky one. We don't fully understand cramp. At least last time I checked the literature, we didn't fully understand cramp, exactly what was causing it. And probably because it is multifactorial, or there's different types of cramp. There's cramp that's caused by extreme fatigue or overworking of the muscle, and that changing something to do with whatever the kind of sodium, potassium pump within that muscle, calcium, the excitability of the muscles, like something's going on there. I don't understand it well, but it's one of the areas. And then you've got this other realm of like really low salt intake. So this is an issue for me, that it's been so demonized. Now, flip this on its head as well. You've got all of this public health funding, money being thrown at morons to then disseminate this message, eat less salt. And it then comes down to like, don't add salt to your food, blah, blah, blah. When we know that, and do you know what, whoever time points this podcast for me, you'll speak to me about this. But I believe it's upwards of 90+% of the salt that people tend to consume is coming from processed foods. It's not the salt we're adding here and there on our food. I will just say this as well. I never use myself as this isn't because I like salt. I love salt. Like, I do like salt, but I'm not actually someone who adds a great deal of salt to my diet at all. I forget to. And when I'm with someone and they add it and I add it, I'm like, oh, geez, I really love salt. And then I forget again. But if I ever have roast potatoes, I'm always like, yes, that's where my salt goes. But other than that, I'm not a big salt fanatic. So whilst I never ever would use, I talk about aggressive dieting, and that's something that I've used, but all of what I talk about is from research, not myself. So I haven't got any sort of skin in the game. I've got no dog in the race. Skin in the game. What's the word? What's the phrase? Both of those maybe. Anyway, I was talking to Sarah last night, and I said, we're talking shop, because it was Saturday night, and we're talking about something work related, and I was like, oh, look at us talking shop. And she was like, what? I was like, talking shop. And she was like, what does that mean? She was like, is that an Australian term? I think because I'd been talking to someone Australian. And I was like, no, you idiot, you're so uncultured. Anyway, I had to go and find from the whatever it's called, Clifton's dictionary definition, phrase, something or other. Can't remember what it's called. Anyway, to tell her what talking shop meant. Like, everyone knows what talking shop is, right? Except Sarah. Why am I saying that? Talking shop. Goodness me, that was off topic. Talking about sodium. I was talking about phrases. Skin in the game, dog in the game. Hilarious. People have said that to me. They like how I sort of recount back to where the story is, or where I was. It's an important skill that I've needed to learn because I go off topic too much. Anyway, the research, 90+% is coming from processed foods. So this was when I did that tweet. I'm not going to be asking people about salt particularly. Like, salt is something, the government recommendations, they're not too bad, the 6 gram, at least in the UK, 6 grams or less. Like, you're really given a whole load of room there with regards to your diet. And you'd have to be fairly extreme to be above that. But there's just this thing again, like, should we update the recommendations to make it even lower? And unfortunately, it's the health motivated individuals who then go to the extremes and push it lower and lower. And that is not their fault. It's the fault of the people, the nutrition communicators. They need to do a better job in terms of what people are hearing and what they're implementing. And people who don't care about their diet are not listening, and they're the ones who are eating lots of processed food with lots of salt on. And so, in these situations, a healthy individual adding more salt to their diet isn't giving themselves. It's a little bit like the way sugar is demonized. Someone who's highly active drinking a sports drink, they're not giving themselves diabetes because hashtag sugar, hashtag insulin. That's not how it works. They're not causing insulin resistance. So by adding some salt to your diet, you're not causing hypertension, high blood pressure. The body, sort of, when it's functioning well, quite tightly regulates your blood levels of sodium, and you will excrete more sodium in your urine, and you'll even, if you sweat, your sweat sodium concentration will go up. A much greater amount is lost through your urine, but your sweat does change its concentration of salt with your dietary intake. And individuals, vary in these salty sweaters. Was a big area of study. Professor Susan Sheriffs and Professor Ron Morn just did loads of stuff on this. And anyway, so in those individuals, it's like, just consider replacing it, especially if you're getting cramp. It's your first line of have a look at that. But we also have this issue of individuals who are insulin resistant. I actually remember myself and Stu Phillips. This was basically when our long-term love affair started. He's like the god, like one of the godfathers of nutrition to me when I was a nutrition student. He's just like one of these names that's just in the area. And then obviously the world opened up. I actually commented on his Facebook status the other day saying he commented about these people emailing him, like just being mad about one of his new research findings or something that he had written to do with not needing to lift near maximal weights for him and his group. Like, there's this 30 rep max to failure study where muscle protein synthesis responses are very similar to lower weights, etc., etc. People get mad, Anyway, I just commented on it and just said, it's mental. These people are even able to email you, because he gets lots of other positive emails, which are always nice. I get the same. It's nice. But I remember then Twitter came about, and it was where lots of academics went. And I was like, I'm able to interact with the Stu Phillips. And it was cool. And then we sort of ended up having this little bit of a debate about the DASH diet, which is dietary approaches to salt and hypertension. I don't actually even know anymore. But it's just this name that's used. And it's, his standpoint was like, it's an evidence-based strategy, because it's not just salt, it's also about changing diet in a positive way, less processed, more whole grains, all, whatever. And I was sort of going, yeah, but this, like, the inclusion of the salt element in the diet is just really fluff. It's kind of not useful. In the grand scheme of things, you get people to eat better, you get them to eat a less processed diet, and yes, maybe their salt intake comes down, but I sort of am of the opinion, if you did the same diet, the same study, 2 groups, but one group didn't change their salt intake or even added the salt back in that they lost through removing the processed foods, they'd still get these dramatic reductions in blood pressure, statistically significant reductions we see in this study, because overall they are losing weight and improving their dietary quality. And one of the things that improves is when insulin goes down, and also the insulin sensitivity goes up in these studies. This interacts with the renal system, the renin-angiotensin system, which is all part of how your the resorption of sodium salt in your kidneys. So you're trying to excrete it, but when you're really insulin resistant, you're not getting rid of that sodium appropriately. And so we get this retention, and it's all part of a bigger picture that you just need to get healthy. If you start exercising, that's going to impact insulin sensitivity. You also might sweat some of the salt out if you are retaining too much, etc., etc. You improve your diet. So all of this stuff helps, and really just salt is just like meh. The body is, mostly regulates that, and you need to. It's not the salt that's the issue. You need to sort out the other stuff that's going on. I'm not saying, if someone is consuming insane amounts that shouldn't be looked at, but really it's like, why are they doing that? How are they doing that? And then you get back to food and their habits and their lifestyle, which a good nutritionist, a good practitioner that's going to be what's talked about in the consultation. So going back to that Twitter conversation, we had a bit of a debate, and I was calling him wrong and he was saying I was wrong. And he was saying, but it's an evidence-based strategy. And I was saying, yeah, but it's flawed. And he's saying, but it's still evidence-based. And I was like, yeah, but all the stuff I just said to you. And I think the next day he did like a Follow Friday for me. This is like one of my, if you could call it idols, just an influence, just someone I thought was cool. I'd read all of his research. And then, and he was just like, someone who can not, go into just ad hominems and just be in an argument and a, great debate, a constructive debate, a great discussion. And I was like, it was literally what, I can remember this. This is literally going back 12, 13 years, maybe, I don't know. I can still remember it to this day. And then years later, he did a sabbatical in Loughborough from wherever, McMaster in Canada or whatever. And we went for coffee, and it was like one of the coolest conversations. And then maybe I then had him on my podcast when I had Real Nutrition Radio podcast. Anyway, off topic, reminiscing. It's cool things like that. I still remember when Professor Clyde Williams started following me on Twitter, and I was like, wow, this is cool. Anyway, off topic. I feel like I've given you a good lowdown there. Like, salt isn't this big thing that needs to be super demonized. It's people's overall diet. Yes, statistically significantly, we can dramatically reduce someone's salt intake in a controlled study, and at the same time their blood pressure falls by a few tiny points on an individual level. But we can see much, much, much greater effect through overall dietary strategies. And another study that I'll get found for you as well is just how pointless public health messaging is on getting people to reduce their salt intake. It's just a dramatic failure. It might even be a Cochrane review, actually, that one. It's just a very good type of study which gives really high quality information, and it's just like, we've just failed to get people to change their salt intakes. We need to do something else. And this is where then working with industry comes about a little bit, but food industry, but that, they're just all about profit, unfortunately. Not as individuals, but as companies, unfortunately, that all decisions are masked just by this thing of like, we need to make more money. So they're not great to have sitting at the table. Anyway, cool. I hope you've enjoyed that. I enjoyed it. And until next time, much love. And I hope it's helpful. I hope you can share it with someone, family member, etc. Yeah.